Lucian's description, amplified by the later account of Macrobius, and further illustrated by the local coinage of Hierapolis, reveals the central cult as that of a divine pair. The male god, a form of Hadid, is symbolized by the bull, and is hence both Lord of Heaven and Creator. The female deity is shown by her very name, Atargatis, to be a form of Ishtar or Astarte. Being mated with the god, whom Lucian calls Zeus, she is called by him Hera, but she wears a mural crown, and is symbolized by the lion, and Lucian recognizes in her traces of Cybele, Aphrodite, Artemis, and other aspects of the mother goddess. An examination of the materials, which modern research has made available, shows this cult to be attributable historically to the Hittites, the earliest known masters of the soil. The dawn of history in all parts of Western Asia discloses the established worship of a nature goddess, in whom the productive powers of the earth were personified. She is our Mother Earth, known otherwise as the Mother Goddess or Great Mother. Among the Babylonians and northern Semites, she was called Ishtar. She is the Ashtoreth of the Bible, and the Astarte of Phoenicia. In Syria her name was Athar, and in Cilicia it had the form of 8, Athar. At Hierapolis, with which we are primarily concerned, it appears in later Aramaic as Atargatis, a compound of the Syrian and Cilician forms. In Asia Minor, where the influence of the Semitic language did not prevail, her various names have not survived, though it is recorded by a later Greek writer as Mur at one of her mountain shrines, and as Agdistis amongst one tribe of the Phrygians and probably at Pessinus. These differences, however, are partly questions of local tongue, for in one way and another there was still a prevailing similarity between the essential attributes and worship of the nature goddess throughout Western Asia. The origins of this worship and its ultimate development are not directly relevant to our present inquiry, but we must make passing allusion to a point of special interest and wide significance. As regards Asia Minor, at least, a theory that explains certain abnormal tendencies in worship and in legend would attribute to the goddess, in the primitive conception of her, the power of self-reproduction, complete in herself. A hypothesis justified by the analogy of beliefs current among certain states of primitive society. However that may be, a male companion is nonetheless generally associated with her in mythology, even from the earliest historical vision of Ishtar in Babylonia, where he was known as Tammuz, while evidence is wanting to define clearly the original position of this deity in relation to the goddess. The general tendency of myth and legend in the lands of Syria and Asia Minor, with which we are specially concerned, reveals him as our offspring, the fruits of the earth. The basis of the myth was human experience of nature, particularly the death of plant life with the approach of winter, and its revival with the spring. In one version accordingly, Adonis descends for the 6 winter months to the underworld, until brought back to life through the divine influence of the goddess. The idea that the youth was the favored lover of the goddess belongs to a different strain of thought, if indeed it was current in these lands at all in early times. In Asia Minor at any rate, the sanctity of the goddess's traditional powers was safeguarded in popular legend by the emasculation of Attis, and in worship by the actual emasculation of her priesthood, perhaps the most striking feature of her cult. The abnormal and impassioned tendencies of her developed worship would be derived, according to this theory, from the efforts of her worshippers to assist her to bring forth, notwithstanding her singleness. However that may be, the mourning for the death of the youthful god, and rejoicing at his return, were invariable features of this worship of nature. It is reasonable to believe that long before the curtain of history was raised over Asia Minor, the worship of this goddess and her son had become deep-rooted. There then appeared the Hittites. In relation with Babylonia and Egypt, these peoples had already become known at the close of the 3rd millennium BC, and, to judge from the biblical accounts, numbers of them had settled here and there throughout Syria and Palestine as early as the days of the patriarchs. Nothing is known of their constitution and organization in these days, however. It is not until their own archives speak that we find them in the 14th century BC an already established constitutional power, with their capital at Bogoskui. Their sway extended southward into Syria, as far as the Lebanon, eastward to the Euphrates, and at times into Mesopotamia, westward as far as Lydia, and probably to the sea coast. Their chief deity was a god omnipotent, the Lord of heaven, with lightning in his hand, the controller of storms ruling in the skies, and, hence identified with the sun. At Senjali, in the north of Syria, he was represented simply with trident and hammer, the emblems of the lightning and the thunder,